Your family has oftentimes been referred to as the Kennedys of country music. Why is that?
Because my family, the Williams family, we have just been through tons of tragedy.
You actually died for
10 seconds, but it felt like 10 minutes. And it took 45 minutes for the life flight and ambulance to get there, and they said I shouldn't have lived over 30 minutes. They told me I had broken my left collarbone, ribs, my colon ruptured. I broke both of my hips, back, pelvis, tailbone, shattered my right femur, and had a compound fracture.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you passed, what was your experience that you remember?
This huge archangel appeared, faceless, with a white robe and everything and big wings. And I remember the angel being like, "We gotta go."
Welcome to this episode of Rooted Recovery Stories. I am always excited when we kick off our episodes, but extra excited today to be talking to my guest. She's a member of a country music royalty family, granddaughter to Hank Williams Sr., daughter to Hank Williams Jr., and author, musician, singer, songwriter. The list goes on. Hilary Williams.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm really so grateful. There is just this aura of, I can't even explain it, peace and gratitude about you that is very unique. And I'm grateful to be in your presence.
Oh, thank you.
I am. So your family has oftentimes been referred to as the Kennedys of country music. Why is that?
Because my family, the Williams family, we have just been through tons of tragedy in my family. So that's why we're referred to as that. And my grandfather died at 29 years old. My dad had a horrible mountain fall in 1975. He was 26 years old. And then, of course, my sister and I were in a bad car accident. And then I lost my half-sister in a tragic car accident, and she passed away in 2020 and left behind her husband and 2 little kids.
Gosh. When you think about some of the main things that have helped you all cope and survive as a family, what are some of those main themes?
Faith, prayer, just loving on each other, being there for each other.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think. I'm like going blank.
I know, right? It's fine. We talk about triumph over tragedy is really the core. If you look at every story that we talk about here, and life can be just as ugly as miraculously beautiful.
Yes.
As it is so much of the time. And at the heart of what we want to accomplish in our conversations is identifying the solution, right? But we can't talk about the solution if we haven't gotten to what happened. And that's the part that I always like weaving that thread in someone's life first, is just starting foundationally at the beginning. So take us back before, you've got this big story to talk about. But little Hilary, when she was a little girl, if you go back to thinking about time as a child, how would she describe life growing up in the Williams family?
It was great. I mean, my mom is amazing woman, a big prayer warrior. It was really stable. My parents separated when I was 4 years old, and they divorced when I was 8 years old. And people assumed it was just this party, wild parties all the time, and celebrities at our house. And it wasn't like that at all. My dad always said, "I'm Bocephus on stage and I'm daddy to y'all." And so it was, for the most part, it was very normal, except for getting in the limo with dad and hopping on the jet and going to a show with him. That's totally the opposite side spectrum. But no, it was great.
Yeah.
Very loving and supportive.
Did were you exposed to a lot of the other people in the music industry as well in your personal life? Did that mix, or did you have a lot of did your parents try to keep you as not insulated as possible from all of that?
I mean, they just, mixed us in with their like core friends, which were Waylon Jennings, Jesse Coulter, and Johnny Cash and June. And I mean, those are the only people like I remember being around when I was young.
That's some. I mean, that's all? Really, Hilary? That's
yes,
it?
No, they're all icons. And June Carter was my dad's godmother.
Oh, wow.
And they were friends with my grandparents. And then Johnny Cash and I shared the same birthday. And Mom would take us swimming at Waylon and Jesse's house, and we played with Shooter when we were young, and it was great. But we had no idea that they were these huge famous people, because they just treated them more normal,
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that to think about, like, just growing up like that, the transition. Not a lot of people can say they've experienced something similar.
On top of all the tragedies we've experienced in the Williams family, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when I was 8 years old.
What was that experience like for you?
I was craving Gatorade all the time and thirsty and going to the bathroom a lot. And I was already a skinny kid, and I'd lost 20 pounds in 2 weeks. And one morning I woke up and I just couldn't get off the couch. And so my mom took me to the doctor, and my blood sugar was 800. And they said if we'd waited a couple more days, I would have been in a coma. But I was just glad to find out like what was wrong with me. I knew something wasn't right.
When you got that answer, do you remember, I mean, I know you were 8 years old, so it's hard to go back that far, but like, do you remember any specific fear or realization around mortality, death? There's some foreshadowing here that I'm curious about, right?
No, I didn't think about mortality or death, because thank God it was curable, at that time, and still is to this day.
Yeah.
Because a long time ago, it wasn't curable.
Right. That's beautiful that you didn't. I
think I was too young, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I was one of those kids where every time I heard about somebody having something, I was like, do I have?
But I felt like I was dying when I was like laid up on the couch, and I literally like couldn't move because my blood sugar was so high.
It's terrifying. So, take me to the day, or leading up to the day. What was happening in your life and your family right before the day you died?
My sister was getting ready to go on tour in Germany. My sister Holly. My attorney was flying out to LA. I had an EP then, and he was shopping for me a record deal. And the day we had our car accident, he was in LA meeting with record labels for me.
So that morning, what happened? What was on the schedule for you?
And my grandfather had passed, my mom's dad. And we were having to do a quick trip because Holly had to get back home and go to Germany and everything. So we were driving to Marouge, Louisiana, where my mom is from. It's about an 8-hour drive from here. And we left about 8 o'clock and loaded up the car and hit the road. And my mom was already down there. And I remember like leading up to that day, I was having really bad anxiety. Like I didn't want to go for some reason, but I'm like, I can't miss my grandfather's funeral. But I felt like I was having some kind of weird premonition or something. I don't know. I had horrible anxiety. And, and so the wreck happened in Robbinsville, Mississippi, right outside of Tunica, right past the casinos. And we were on Highway 61, and I had glanced down for a second to change my iPod. And this was March 15th, 2006. And there were bad ruts in the road, and I didn't realize like the road curved and there was real thick gravel on either side. And when I glanced down, it shifted my car in the gravel, and my sister screamed really loud, and I'm not blaming her, and I freaked out, and I jerked the wheel, overcompensated, and they said we did a 360 in the highway, and then a wheel came off, and we slid across the highway and then flipped in a field 4 times. And my sister didn't wear her seatbelt, and like 15 minutes before the wreck happened, we'd stopped to get gas, and I was like, and she had her legs out the window. It was like a beautiful spring day. And I was like, Holly, you need to like sit up, put your seatbelt on, and bring your legs in the car. And she's like, and usually she doesn't listen to me, but thank God she did. She's like, Hilary, I'd be dead if like you didn't say that to me.
Wow. Wow.
And then, yeah, we also like landed like this, and I was hanging in the air, and Holly was down here, and the seatbelt was really tight on me. I couldn't breathe, and I thought she had passed because she wasn't making any noises. And then she finally like started coming to and moaning and stuff, and she was out of it. And I was just crying out to God, praying like, please send your angels to help us. And I was saying, I'm not ready to die yet. I was 27 at the time. Holly was 25. I said, I want to go to Europe. I want to get married. I want to have kids. I was like rattling off my list. And a truck driver stopped to help us, a physical therapist and a preacher lady. And I said, y'all got to push this car over. I can't breathe. And they said, we can't. I was like, you just please try. And so they did. And I know that there were hidden angels there because the car came slowly to the ground. I didn't just...
do the
slam
kapow.
down. Yeah, kapow. Yeah. And then I kept wanting to go to sleep, and the truck driver said, honey, you got to stay awake. And he kept like rubbing my hand because he said, if you go to sleep, you're going to pass away. Somebody wanted to pull me out of the car, and the physical therapist said, no, don't do that. You could kill her. And then the preacher woman was just praying and crying out to God. And thank God, like I was remembering my mom's cell phone number and everything. Holly was confused and didn't know where she was, and so they called my mom and everybody and told them what was going on, and it took 45 minutes for the life flight and ambulance to get there, and they said I shouldn't have lived over 30 minutes.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay, so wow, I've got so many questions. First of all, though, did you to your knowledge, did you lose consciousness at all, or do you remember the whole process?
I remember everything, but my vision also was black, and I thought I was permanently blind, but they said it's because I had lost so much blood. Wow. I lost 6 pints of blood. And then they did the jaws of life and pulled Holly and I out of the car. And then when I was on the stretcher, my blood pressure was 55 over nothing. And that's when I passed. But miraculously, I mean, I was pretty conscious the whole time.
So the wreck happens and you're upside down praying, but you can't see anything. Your eyes are open.
And I hear everything.
You hear everything.
Yeah.
You know the wreck has happened.
Yeah.
And
I felt like I had been on like a horrible roller coaster ride because like it was just all the flipping. And I think I covered my eyes. Like, I think I just let go of the wheel and I just kind of freaked out. Like I didn't know what to do.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, holy cow. So they get there and the life flight arrives. And you said they had to use the jaws of life to get you out of before you could even get on the life flight.
Yeah. Yeah.
And on the scene, you actually died for...
They said 10 seconds, but it felt like 10 minutes.
Yeah. What happened?
And also, like, when we were on our side, the windshield had caved in and it was an inch going through my sister's head. Like, it almost did. And then her head went through the sunroof a little bit, so she had, like, glass in there. But they said if it had gone any further, she would have been brain dead. And then the car was on top of her car. The car was on top of her arm. And I just thought it was like going to be decapitated, but it was just broken. Wow. Thank God it wasn't any worse. Sorry, what was the question?
No, that's fine. Listen, you roll out those details as they come.
All over the place.
We're unwrapping trauma for you. So
yeah.
in reverence for that, it comes out how it needs to come out. And
yeah.
I want to, be respectful of that. So just feel free to let it roll. So you said you died for 10 seconds, but it felt like 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. So that tells me you were feeling something.
Yeah. Also, they told me I had broken my left collarbone, ribs, my colon ruptured. I broke both of my hips, back, pelvis, tailbone, shattered my right femur, and had a compound fracture.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And Holly looked a lot worse. Her eyes were really bloodshot, and they thought she was worse, but I was worse off because all my injuries were internal.
Mm-hmm. Dang. So when you passed, what was your experience that you remember?
I remember being on the stretcher, and I felt like I was like drowning in a pool, or I had like tons of bricks on top of my chest, like I couldn't breathe. And a faceless angel came to take my hand. They said I'd gone into cardiac arrest. And this huge like archangel appeared, faceless, with a white robe and everything and big wings. And I remember the angel being like, "We gotta go." And I came out of my body, and it was like being in a helicopter, like looking down. I just slowly like started going up, and then went to heaven, and I saw pearly gates. I saw streets of gold. I saw beautiful flowers, and everything's animated up there. And also you don't talk. You like intuitively talk to your loved ones up there. And I saw Hank and Audrey, my grandparents and my dad's parents. And I saw Johnny Cash and June Carter and Merle Kilgore, who was my dad's manager for like 60 years. And he co-wrote Ring of Fire with June. So I saw like family and dear family friends. And then, June was playing the auto harp. Johnny was playing the guitar. And Merle was just like slapping his leg. And everyone's young up there. My grandfather had on a white suit and a white cowboy hat. My grandmother had on red lipstick and a navy and white polka dot dress. And I remember I was super happy and peaceful, and I didn't want to leave. But my grandfather like basically said, like, "We're sending you back." And he put his arm around my grandmother, and then I came right back to earth.
Gosh. What did it feel like when you processed the next moments of reflection on what had just happened, what you had just experienced?
It didn't hit me till like later, and I didn't tell people quite a while. I was just like, I can't believe that happened. It was just so incredible.
Yeah.
And I also saw a mansion, and it looked like it was made up of like gold and diamonds and icing, and it was like waving, like animated. Everything's just happy and animated up there.
I love it.
Mm-hmm. And I just felt so much joy and peace. And, it gives me peace. I've lost family members and dear close friends since my car accident and before. But now I'm like, no, now I know where they're headed to and what it's like.
Yeah. You were sent back for a purpose, though.
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So what? You went from there to the hospital.
Yeah. They loaded Holly. We were on 2 separate life flights. They loaded Holly and I up, and they both said that we kept asking about each other, just wanted to make sure like we were okay. And then the pain also didn't hit me for an hour. And I remember feeling my left hip like being halfway down my leg, and they told me it was halfway down my leg and turned upside down.
Ooh.
Yeah. Wow. And then I had on the Uggs, and that this bone broke in half and came out of my leg, but the Uggs like helped keep everything intact.
Wow.
So I was grateful I was wearing those that day.
Ugg plug.
Yes. Yeah. So, and then we landed on top of the hospital, and then when they were rolling me on top of the hospital on the stretcher, that's when the pain, everything like hit me out of nowhere. And I was like, "Oh my God, y'all got to pick this up. I'm in so much pain." And then I remember seeing my dad, and he grabbed my hand, and he said that my feet were blue and my lips were blue. And like some of the doctors said they were shaking when they saw me get brought in there. And then they must have given me something, because I don't remember anything until the next day. And I know I went into surgery right away for 8 hours.
Wow.
Because they had to treat my colon first, because you can go septic.
Right.
And then they do the broken bones.
So I know you mentioned some of the highlights of the things that were broken in the wreck, but you've told your story so many times, I'm sure you probably can rattle this off, but if you want to, I'm curious what were all the things that they had to fix that you remember? Because I know it's a pretty long list.
I don't even remember everything, but I had over 30 surgeries. And some of the surgeries I was a guinea pig for. They had to keep going back because I was so badly broken from the waist down that the metal kept shifting. So they had to keep going back in, putting different metal in. At one point down the road, a piece of metal that was in my right leg snapped in half. And it was supposed to last a lifetime. And my femur was so badly shattered. It took 5 years to heal. And my doctor was like, well, the metal was taking the brunt of your weight because your femur was not completely healed. So that's why it snapped in half. Wow. And so I had to go back in like 2 years after the accident, and they put 2 plates and screws in. But it was like basically from the waist down they had to fix, and then my colon, they had to take 2 feet out because it had ruptured. They didn't have to fix my collarbone. It healed on its own. It was mainly hips and legs.
Yeah. So 30 surgeries. Where did you live at the hospital for?
I was in Memphis for a month, and then they put me on a medical jet and transferred me to Vanderbilt. And then I was in and out of Vanderbilt for like 2.5 years. And I would get better, and then I had to relearn how to walk 3 different times because something would break or shift, and I'd have to go back in for surgery because like my legs weren't fully healed. Uh-huh. So I went from a wheelchair to a walker to crutches to a cane 3 different times. And I learned how to walk in a pool because that has 0 gravity.
I'm curious because of how much of a toll this trauma has to take on your mind and emotions. Is there a parallel between those stages of learning to walk? As you said, you were going from a wheelchair to crutches to a walker to a cane. As you had to process all of this trauma that you had lived through, what was it like going through the process of even realizing that it was, because in 2006 we weren't mental health aware like we are today.
No.
Where were you, like, in your mind at that point, and how were you dealing with all of this?
I think I didn't realize like how bad the car accident was, and I didn't really realize what all had happened to me. Like I didn't realize how many internal injuries I had. So and I feel like that was a blessing in disguise. So I was just like going with the flow. I just wanted to get back to myself and sing and do what I love,
Yeah. But you couldn't.
No, I couldn't.
How did that affect you?
I mean, I had a lot of depression and, years later, PTSD. Well, it hit me then, but thank God I found out about neurofeedback 4 years ago, and that helped my PTSD. I didn't drive on the interstate for like 5 years. I had horrible anxiety, and thankfully I can drive now on the interstate, no problems. But my mom's a big prayer warrior, and she'd have her friends come over and pray for me. And I just relied on my faith in God, to get me through.
Yeah. So how long did you have to postpone the life you had been living before the accident? How long was it before you were able to get back to your music and, how long till normalcy was starting to kick in for you?
Probably 5 years. Yeah. I think it was 5 years. Mm-hmm.
Mm. So, and you were 27 when it happened. Mm-hmm. 30 is a huge, for men and women, is a huge like threshold for like, just psychologically, we all go through something when we, maturity wise, go through that aging process. If you're in the middle of a trauma, especially a medical trauma, and trying to heal or process through during that time, it can be quite dynamic in how it affects everything, from your memory around the time period to your relationships with people to you name it, all those things. So as we've talked about, later on, you realized you had PTSD. What were some of the signs and symptoms that played out over the following years, that gave you awareness that there was something lingering? Right?
Yeah. I just had like really bad panic attacks, and, I was just in fight or flight mode all the time, and my body wasn't at peace. And I wanted to be still, and I wanted to be calm and at peace. And I'm trying to think of signs.
Yeah.
I didn't lash out, but there was a point. It was like 6 years after the car accident, and I was living in my condo, and my anxiety was so bad that I thought the ceiling was going to crash down on me. I had panic attacks on airplanes, but I never lashed out or anything. I kept it like all to myself.
So, being somebody that's dealt with my own fair share of panic attacks, I know they all look different. People deal with them differently. We talk about how it affects your quality of life. How was it interfering with your quality of life? Like, because it goes on long enough that you're in fight or flight mode.
Yeah. And I was on painkillers for so long, and my body's very sensitive. My body does not like painkillers, but I had to be, but they all like pretty much made me violently ill. And Zofran was my lifesaver, but the only one that helped me was Dilaudid. But that was tough too, because my body doesn't like painkillers, and I would be itchy and just have all the horrible side effects, my quality of life.
So when I think about when panic attacks would hit you during different, it's never convenient to have a panic attack.
Yeah.
But if you're on an airplane, if you're at an important dinner, an important function, in the car driving, all those different things, when you look back to how that the pinnacle of the fight or flight would kick in during those panic attacks. Yeah. What are some of the situations in life that manifested and it was stealing life from you?
Well, not being able to drive on the interstate, that was stealing life from me, because it takes a lot longer taking back roads, or if you have to take a road trip. I still would get on airplanes and stuff. It was just not easy for me. And I never had a fear of flying.
Right.
But I know it was just like all that stored trauma in there and everything. And then they gave me Xanax in the hospital so I could sleep. And, but then I got addicted to that. And so I would pop those when I would have a panic attack or something. But then I hated feeling like numb and having no emotions. And so I quit doing the Xanax.
Yeah. It's wonderful that you were able to do that. And because it can be, it's one of those that can be very hard for people, the class of drug that it is, right? Yeah. To stop, no matter if you have the addict gene or not.
Yeah.
And
I found a holistic doctor many years ago, and she gave me some all natural anxiety drops that it was like Xanax, but homeopathic. And it was great. And
that's wonderful.
That I just remember that. Yeah. And that helped my panic attacks when it would hit me.
Is that what, so I'm curious what, did you still have, experience panic and any fight or flight as you were on Xanax? Do you ever reach a threshold where the Xanax stopped working and the panic attacks came back?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know, so oftentimes I talk to people that same story. And it's like you get to a point where if the trauma is not addressed, it's going to find its way through eventually.
Yeah.
And then, so it's, it's good that you listen to whatever that voice was saying, I need to find something different to address this.
Yeah.
So what did you finally do? I know you mentioned you found neurofeedback a handful of years back.
I wish I'd known about it a long time ago, but yeah, my sister knew KK that owns Tennessee Neurofeedback, and I met her at a interior designers party, and I was telling her about the car accident. She was like, "Oh, honey, you've got a lot of trauma. You need like 40 to 60 sessions." And I ended up doing a total of over 120 sessions, a total of 141 sessions. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
The stories I've heard of how impactful neurofeedback has been in people's lives.
And like, I didn't tell them what happened to me. And they, I did a brain map, and they said, "Were you in a bad car accident, or did you have a bad concussion?" I was like, "A really bad car accident." It's just crazy how they can look at your brain and tell like what's happened to you.
It absolutely tells a story. That's for sure. So what, I'm curious with identifying that you had PTSD, like what other forms of healing did you utilize? Did you go to therapy?
Yeah, I went to therapy. I did
this?
talk therapy. I had started going to therapy like in my late 30s. And then I started going to sound baths 7 years ago, and I am studying to be actually a sound bath healer also.
I love that.
And I'm getting my diploma in to be a professional sound healer. And I noticed when I went to the sound baths, like it just helped my pain so much and calm my body down and everything.
There's a whole, I can't even put words to the power that's in that experience.
I feel like that's the modern medicine of the 21st century.
I love to know that you're doing that. It's beautiful. This podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health. If you or a loved one are struggling with trauma, addiction, or mental health, we are ready to answer your questions and help you take that next step. Call our admission center at 888-648-4098 or visit us online at www.promises.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help. Going back just a second, for those who don't know or haven't heard of neurofeedback, explain just the basic, what you came to know, what it was. What did they do? And what was your experience like having that? And
I had a family member, he did it for a year, and it greatly helped him. I just knew that it balanced your brain waves. So it basically like normalized your brain again. And that's all I knew. So I'm like, well, that's what I want. I don't want PTSD anymore, and I want my brain normal and healthy.
Yeah. To find that peace and a baseline. It sounds like for years you hadn't felt what a baseline was.
No, and sometimes my pain was so horrific. Like, I'm like, Jesus, take me home. I can't take this anymore. I mean, I had some times like that.
Yeah.
But...
So as you do the neurofeedback, what's the process when you go in, and what was the treatment like?
They do a brain map, and then they tell like where you have your trauma stored, and then they figure out where to place the sensors on your head. And you lay back in a chair. You can do your eyes open or eyes closed. I like to do it eyes closed with the lights off. And I usually fall asleep, and you just listen to musical tones. It's a 30-minute session, and it's just so calming and healing. Beautiful. And you don't have to do anything. You just lay there and listen to
it does the work.
Musical tones, and it does the work. Yeah. And then the, I don't know what you call them, nurse or the person working at the center, they're watching your brain waves and to see how it's responding to you and everything, and to make sure it's working and the sensors are placed in the right area.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So how would you say on the other side of doing the neurofeedback has your quality of life mentally changed?
Oh my gosh, I just feel so calm and confident, and I can do anything. And I'm not having like all these like ups and downs and emotional swings and everything.
That's beautiful.
Yes. Crying a lot less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love hearing when we talk about stories of triumph over tragedy, when we get to the part where somebody's face lights up like yours just did. And it tells me that like I found joy again, because that's essentially what you were saying.
Yeah.
Peace and joy are absolutely priceless, especially after weathering a storm that you don't know if is ever going to end.
Yeah. Yeah. And my dad was so encouraging. You know, he had 18 surgeries after his mountain fall, and it's miraculous he lived. And he would always be like, honey, you know, you had more surgeries than me. Like, you can do this. And my mom was like, you were the best patient. You never complained or anything about what you've been through.
When you get that feedback, did you feel an obligation to continue the narrative of what they were saying? Like, oftentimes I've heard, you know, people say, I was told I was strong, so I felt I had to be, you know?
Yeah.
Did you find yourself fulfilling, like, I'm just curious about where did your strength come from? And did you feel like so much of the time you were just trying to be strong because you had to be?
Yeah. And even before the wreck, I always felt like I had to be strong, you know, put a face on.
Why?
I don't know. It was just like in me, but I don't know. I guess I didn't want to look weak. So I was like, oh, I got to be strong all the time. But, you know, you need to be weak because you need to let things move through you and heal and everything.
Yeah.
And it hurts to heal. So the only way you're going to heal is like dealing with your hurts and pains and everything.
And actually feeling it.
And feeling it, not numbing it.
Well, yeah. And, you know, I think it's interesting when we really peel back the layers of what that false sense of quote unquote being strong is, because underneath is always pain. I mean, like, the human experience involves pain.
Yeah.
And so if we're always, you know, that narrative of you got to be strong, pull yourself up by the bootstraps and just handle and deal with life. There is a storage underneath that of pain that has not been felt, and it's going to build up until you feel it, sister.
Also, when I was in Memphis going through my surgeries, I told the doctor, I said, doctor, I'm in so much pain. And also I went to ketoacidosis the first week, and that almost killed me as well. My blood sugar ran 500 every day from the trauma. And they had me on an insulin pump drip thing. But my surgeon said, or one of my surgeons, he said, honey, pain is a sign of life. And I'm thinking, oh my God, that's so true. And like, I named my book that, and I wrote a song called Sign of Life. Like, if we're not feeling pain, we're not living, you know?
That's true. Somebody so much wiser than me, and I can't remember who it was, said, I've heard it said in so many different forms, but that if we're not uncomfortable, if we don't have discomfort, we're not changing. If we're comfortable, we're in a place of being stagnant and what have you. So, I think I love that sentiment of understanding that, like, with life comes an awareness that with pain comes an awareness that you're alive. But there's something coupled also with learning and growing.
Yeah.
Because we don't shift into a better version of ourselves without being uncomfortable. It's not easy, and it doesn't feel good to ascend to our higher selves.
Yeah. Another thing is, I'm glad they never told me, but my orthopedic surgeons told me down the road, they said, Hilary, like, we didn't know if you were ever going to walk again, but they didn't tell me that. And so I'm really relieved they didn't, because I had faith I was going to walk again. And I would meditate on it, and I would visualize like me walking on the beach and living life.
Wow.
Yeah. Because I think that would have like gave me less hope if they were like, oh, we don't know if you're going to walk again.
Oh gosh, no, you need all of the mental support of you can do this.
Yeah.
This is what you have to do.
And they told me like a lot of the surgeries they did on me, I was a guinea pig for. And so I'm just glad it all worked out.
Me too.
And then, well, my femur took 5 years to heal, and my doctor thought it was going to grow like lengthwise, but it grew in widthwise.
Wow.
And so when he put my hip replacement in, my left leg is a little bit longer than my right leg. So I have to wear a shoe lift and orthotics.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So do you have to get your shoes specially, like the soles adjusted?
No,
or?
I had to make special orthotics for me, so I just put them in shoes.
Oh, okay.
But like I've got on cowboy boots today, so I just wear a little shoe lift.
Oh, that's nice.
But
that's definitely less pricey than having to get all your shoes specifically soled a certain way.
Yeah, that'd be way too expensive.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I'm a very independent person, and I felt bad like having to rely on my mom and my sister to take care of me. So I didn't like having to ask them to help me. And I had a hard time with that. And I had
asking for help?
Yes.
No way.
Yes. I was like embarrassed and I felt like I was burdening them, and I had a little bell and I would like ring it if I needed something.
You're talking about one of the main tenets of any program that a human being gets put into when we've got to address trauma, addiction, any piece of our relational or human psyche being broken. I don't know if it's American society. I haven't lived in any other society, so I can't speak to that.
Me neither.
But I know that it's something that we deal with culturally here anyway. And it may just be a thing of the human experience that we suck at asking for help. Yeah. And some of us more than others, it is like ripping your skin off to get to a place where you're willing to surrender and do that. To your people who are closest to you, like, why on earth? You know, so when you say, I didn't feel like I could be weak or I should be weak, did you feel like weakness was asking for help?
Yeah. And I had to be weak, and I had to ask for help because I couldn't walk. I couldn't shower or anything. My mom would like wash my hair in the hospital bed and, you know, bathe me in the hospital bed and everything. And I had an amazing physical therapist that Vanderbilt set me up with, and she would come to the house, and she was into holistic healing also. And like she recommended cayenne pepper for me to take that to prevent blood clots and bruising. And she was an angel sent, and she had all these like amazing recommendations and everything.
Thank God for those angels that come into our lives. I've had a number of them as well. So we've talked about a lot of the therapeutic modalities that have helped affect your life in a positive way and bring about healing. You were already so inundated in a family that has used sound and music to tell stories, to talk about trauma, to talk about healing, all the things. So it seemed only natural, I'm sure, when you got back to it, to look at using your creativity and your art to tell your story.
Yeah.
Which you did through music and writing a book. Both. You said there was a song also titled the same title as your book.
Yeah.
Sign of Life. What was that process like, writing a book about all of this?
And also, when I wrote Sign of Life, I still was in a hospital bed at my mom's. I was not in the mood to write. And my friend Angela, her roommate at the time was Blue Sanders. He's an incredible songwriter, singer. And she's like, you need to be writing. And I was not in the mood. Like, all those painkillers had me so like foggy and dizzy and hazy. Mm-hmm. And so she like demanded he come over, and he was so sweet. Like, he came over, we wrote that song while I was laid up in the hospital bed. And then, I could use a walker at the time, I remember. But yeah, we wrote that song together, and but it was very therapeutic. Now I'm glad I did it, and she like pressed me to do it. And then the book deal just happened out of nowhere. I met my ghostwriter through mutual friends, and she was friends with the literary agent. Sorry, I did not say that right. Literary agent. And it just fell in my lap and shot for me a book deal. And but yeah, we had 6 months to do it. I had to proof it and edit it 3 different times. That was a lot.
I'm sure.
Yeah. And to keep like reading the trauma over and over, that was a lot on me.
I can only imagine. Well, and I have to think that had you told your story so concisely before this point multiple times, or was this really the first time where you were putting that whole story into?
I'd told different people, but the bulk of it, putting it in the book. People just kept telling me, you need to write a book, like your story's so amazing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love that your story is in a book, but I feel like even more than that, I love that you get to be a walking example of what you've not only survived, but overcome, and what you've brought with you. I think that trauma causes scars for sure, but I think that what we heal with also sticks with us. The gifts that we get as a result of healing shine through. And something that's what I was addressing, like when I was talking at the opening of this episode, I can feel that in you so much. I'm a survivor from a lot of some major medical stuff as well.
Okay.
And and so as being someone who has been through a lot on the edge of death and come back, and like I know it, I see it, I can feel it, and it's a wonderful thing to know that you, from the moment it was asked of you or strongly encouraged by a friend, that you started to use your tools to transmit what you could to help somebody else.
And then I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but I died a second time. They said 3 days later.
What? No, you didn't.
Okay.
I mean,
sorry,
I'm saying you didn't say that.
Okay.
I'm not saying no, you didn't die.
Well, Haley doing my hair and makeup this morning was like, what? I don't know your story. So I was like telling her this morning. So I'm getting like everything confused. But,
no worries.
Yes. When they were working on my hips, doing hip surgery on me, they said I got a blood clot. They had to completely shut the surgery down. They said I died again. I don't remember having an experience then, but there was a team of doctors around me. And when I woke up, just looking down at me, monitoring me. And they also thought they might have to amputate my leg. And thankfully they didn't have to, because they had to do reverse skin flap. And if that didn't take and adhere like to the new blood vessels and everything, they were going to have to amputate.
Yeah.
But it was like real touch and go. And every time I woke up, like my dad was holding my hand and had his head down, and my mom was praying for me, and my sister, and we had many like family members and friends come and everything. And my dad actually like flew in his preacher friend from Kansas City to pray over me. And
so as I shared with you, I've been through my own stuff. And so it's my frame of reference when I'm hearing other people's trauma.
Yeah.
I come from a family of faith. I'm a person of faith as well. Mm-hmm. But I know that I have in my story my own relationship to fear through all of that. And I'm very interested to hear how you would describe yours, because it's only natural as a human being going through all of this, because we haven't touched on it yet. It's a huge, it's primary emotion we have as humans. How did that pop up for you? What were some major themes that you dealt with surrounding fear?
Well, the fear part, like when they transferred me to Vanderbilt, like I thought I was done with surgeries, and the orthopedic surgeon came in and said, you're going to have a bunch more surgeries. And I'm like, what? Like, he was so abrupt. And I called my sister, just sobbing, bawling, crying. Another time I had 20 blood transfusions because I'd lost so much blood, like after a lot of surgeries, and they told me they couldn't give me any more transfusions. They sent me home. I literally thought I was dying. So that was like, fear popped up again, and my mom's friend came over and she goes, you look like your grandfather right now, like talking about Hank Sr.
What every young woman wants to hear.
I was like super skinny, and you know, because the painkillers were making me sick. And she said I was like, you know, white as a ghost. And I had no life. Like, I didn't feel any life force inside of me. And then thankfully my physical therapist was like, take blackstrap molasses and this vitamin called Blood Builder. And that brought my levels back up in 2 weeks.
Wow.
So I had to treat it holistically.
Yeah. So beyond that, how did fear pop up for you again in a different way? Like, I know it's probably hard to recall because it was such a long period that was touch and go for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But after that, what were some ways that you had to deal with combating fear in the recovery process?
I mean, going to talk therapy, and then at that time, I mean, I wasn't going to therapy because I couldn't walk, but for me, like listening to music, that just calms my system down, you know? I guess that would be it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, and you know what? Some people have a specific thing that helps, and that's what does it.
Oh, and another thing is, the breathing tube shot my voice, and I didn't have a singing voice for 6 months, and I would sing every day, like just trying to get my chops up and everything. And that was terrifying to me because I thought I had completely lost my singing voice, and my voice teacher was alive at the time. And she wanted to come over and work with me. So she would come over. I was like really weak, but I'd be in the wheelchair and she'd play the piano and we'd do voice lessons together. So that gave me hope and helped abolish my fear.
When you initially had that fear, though, and your voice was gone or so damaged, and you think about like, okay, well, who am I if this gets taken? Where did you go with that?
Actually,
or was it
I didn't even go there. I was like, my voice is coming back. I am determined. I'm going to do whatever I can to get back there. And she told me, she's like, your voice came back stronger after the car accident.
That's beautiful. As I ask you all these questions, I'm learning more and more about your personality, that you are, if I were to like pick one word to describe a characteristic or value that was so consistent with you, is tenacity, tenacious as hell.
Yeah. Yeah. I was so weak. Like, doing this is making all these memories flood back. My physical therapist had to wrap a belt around me just to pick me up like off the bed because I was so weak from everything. I could barely stand up.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you were just like, I'm gonna do it.
And she had tenacity. I mean, she was so full of like positivity and fire. And so that really helped, having people like that around me. And also Nikki Taylor I didn't know her, but she was a huge role model for me because she had been through 50 surgeries. And I thought, if that woman can get through that, I can get through what I'm going through.
Yeah.
So that gave me a lot of hope. And then my dad had been through his horrible mountain fall. So I had a lot of great examples, for me and people to heal from what I've been through.
What point was it that you remembered and were able to process the moment that you went to heaven as you passed?
God, I don't even remember when it hit me. I think it wasn't until
way later.
Way later. Because they had me so drugged up and everything.
Oh, I get it. Yeah. Stuff pops up a long time later. And then you're like, how have I not thought about this? Because it's as fresh as can be right now.
Yeah.
Which grandfather sent you back home?
My grandfather, Hank Williams Sr., sent me back home. And it was crazy. I didn't see my papa, my mom's dad. He had passed, but I wasn't there long, but I didn't see him. But maybe he was transitioning there or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows? He could have been in one of the other.
Oh, but the crazy thing is he came to my dreams every single night for a few years. So I think he knew like something had happened to me. And so I know he was like definitely comforting me.
That's beautiful.
It was more amazing than what I thought it was going to be. Like what did you say about the painting?
Like it's someone else painted a picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
So your observation of your experience in heaven was similar or different to that of what you had thought?
Like I knew
it was going to be.
It was going to be amazing, but like once I got there, I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. Like just feeling all that love and joy and peace and happiness. Like there's no negativity in heaven at all. And just hearing the amazing voices and seeing the beautiful flowers and the golden streets. I mean, it's just sensory overload, but in a good way. Yeah. It's like a magical carpet ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's absolutely beautiful, Hilary. Yeah, I'm so glad that you were gifted that experience.
Me too.
And that you've gotten to go on and share it.
Yeah. And I feel
people.
like our loved ones are definitely like helping us from the other side, you know?
Yeah, most definitely. So the natural course of my question from here is that there've got to be so many people who are listening or watching this episode that can identify with, obviously not all of your story, but part of it, either from the experiencing physical trauma. They themselves also, passed for a period of time, or, whatever the case may be. What would you say to that person that's struggling with what they've been through and now coping from day to day? They're in that fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
And don't know how to get out, don't know how to find that baseline.
I would just, try to find supportive people, find therapy, a great group, like whatever you need to do to get the help you need and get out of that fight or flight mode and to feel loved and comforted and heard and seen.
What would you say to the person that doesn't want to admit that they need some form of help outside of themselves?
They're going to miss out on a lot of life if they don't get the help they need. Yeah. That's what I would say. I guess. I don't know.
Any advice on making that tough step to ask for help?
I mean, you've just got to like hit your rock bottom, to get to that point. You got to want it.
I think I was going back to like that place where you were feeling like you had to be strong. You weren't going to, do whatever. But there was, like you said, there's a rock bottom at some point somewhere where you've had enough. You're in enough pain where there is nothing left but to ask for help.
And, I don't know if you experienced this as well. I'm sure you did, and people are wonderful, like wanting to help. We had so many people sending food and everything, but a lot of times people would just stop by, and my mom and I had to tell people like, hey, today's not good, because some days I did not feel well. Sure. I didn't feel like talking. And so you got to like take care of yourself also when people are wanting to talk or text or visit or whatever, you know?
I love that you brought that up, because what I take from that is asking for help looks a lot of different ways.
Yes.
Because there are certain things that you can't do for yourself that you've got to ask for. There are certain ways that you've got to ask for help that look like setting boundaries.
Yeah.
Like, I gotta say no. I need to ask you to help me to be healthy here.
Yeah.
And it looks all kinds of ways in the trajectory of healing. And so knowing that it takes a village and that you're your own best advocate, nobody's going to advocate for yourself like you. The importance and the ability to ask for help in all the areas of your life is so relevant.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that you brought that piece of it up.
I don't know. That just hit me. And also, people don't need to get offended, like, if you didn't want them to come see you that day or whatever. Like, they need to have empathy and understand and not make it about themselves and their schedule.
Absolutely.
And I'm not trying to, like, down others, but there just needs to be healthy boundaries for everybody.
1,000%.
Yes.
That can be said on so many levels.
Yeah.
Okay, so I want my last big question for you is, you're in this lovely, joyful spot of your life, and I'm so glad that this was the time that our paths crossed, and I get to
Me too.
know you.
Yeah.
I'm so curious and excited to hear what's next on the horizon for your creative journey. What are you doing this year? Do you have anything that you want to share with us about what's next for Hilary Williams?
I'm just writing. I actually filmed my first movie a couple of years ago. It was a small indie film.
Yeah. It
came out December last year. It's called Consider the Lilies. It's a great faith-based film about forgiveness. And then I just took a Western shirt making class with Manny Cuevas, Manuel's son. And that was super fun.
I love that. Is Manuel still living? Mm-hmm. He is?
Yeah, he's like 91, I think. Yeah.
I met him years ago when I was in 2006. I was a student at Belmont.
Okay.
So the year that all happened to you was the year.
Oh yeah, I went to Belmont for a year.
Did you?
And then I studied fashion merchandising. I went to school in Atlanta, at Botter College. Yeah.
I don't even know. I remember I went with some friends over, met Manuel and his daughter.
Oh, Morelia.
Yes. At their, I don't think their shop over, is it still there in that old?
He moved out to his house in Columbia, so it's appointment only now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I know, gosh, for those of you who know, Manuel is like that. He was like the first designer to do those.
Yeah.
How would you describe
he
those?
studied under Nathan Turk and, oh my gosh, Nudie.
Really?
So he like studied all the rhinestone stuff from them and everything. I would call it like eclectic Western wear, I guess, and the beautiful embroidery and the rhinestones. And
it's all
everything.
shiny.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. You know.
And he made clothes for my grandfather and then my dad and my family. And yeah, it's beautiful.
I love it. Well, I'm excited to see some of the stuff that you come up with and create.
And then I just signed up for Manny's leather making class where you learn how to make a leather fringe bag and you hand sew and you attach the deer antler. Yeah. I'm just doing fun, creative things and songwriting. My album came out 6 years ago. My EP came out 11 years ago. And then, I struggle with endometriosis also since I was a teenager and had horrific periods and cysts and fibroids. And I had a 11-hour surgery in August last year, but I found an endometriosis excision surgeon.
Wow.
And he completely changed my life. I am no longer in pain. I used to have horrible chronic like low back pain and sciatica. And I just feel like reborn and a brand new woman.
I love hearing that. I've got so many girlfriends who struggle with that. And I know how well, I don't know how much pain, but I've watched,
It's awful. It's like you're bedridden for days. You're using a heating pad. It feels like knife driving through your stomach. Yeah.
I'm glad you're better from that.
Yeah.
For sure. So hopefully we can follow along on your creative journey on what's to come next on the IG, the Instagram.
Totally. Yeah.
we'll see. Gosh, thank you so much for being here today and coming to share your story with us. I'm so grateful.
Thank you. Sorry, I feel like I'm like so scatterbrained about everything.
It's when we dig into the trauma and our life story, it's how it unrolls. Very rarely is our brain like, let me unravel this for you in a well-articulated.
Like, also, I know there was a time like, oh, I'm fine. I'm strong. Like, I don't need help. But when your symptoms and your problems get so bad, then you're like, I definitely need some help.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When it gets bad enough. That's what it's all about. Getting to that point where enough is enough.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, I know that your story has already impacted so many people and is going to continue. I'm so honored and grateful that you're allowing us to use our platform and this medium to share it. And so glad to have a new friend.
Thank you.
So,
yes, you too.
Yeah. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Hilary Williams, y'all. And for those of you who have stuck with us, I want to remind you that it is never too late to start loving yourself, and you're always only ever one decision away from a completely different life. This podcast is brought to you by Promises Behavioral Health. If you or a loved one are struggling with trauma, addiction, or mental health, we are ready to answer your questions and help you take that next step. Call our admission center at 888-648-4098 or visit us online at www.promises.com. Our team is ready and waiting to answer the call for help.